So this week's imaginative prayer is focused around this question. Is there anyone in my life right now that I'm having a hard time loving? So often we can grow a little calloused to some of the harder relationships in our life. And I think this is not just true for those of us who are adults living in a world where conflict and disagreements have like real consequences. I think kids too are struggling to sort of know how to be in relationships with people that they disagree with or people that maybe they don't get along with as easily. And some of the self-reflection questions that I find really helpful are questions around the circumstances in my life when I'm confronted with the fact that there are people in my life that I have a hard time loving. There are people with whom I get impatient, and there are some people that I might treat unkindly from time to time. We even can go through seasons where the people that are really close to us can be some of the people that we experience this with the most. And so turning this question, who do I need help loving, towards God and inviting God to speak back and help point out some of the things in our heart that prevent us from being able to show up in a way that's loving. Well, that question sort of transforms a self-directed question into a prayer and a conversation with God when we direct it to God. And one of the simplest ways to begin to teach your child how to hear from God and begin to help your child lean into the practice of being in an ongoing relationship with God is to help your child learn how to ask God very specific questions about their life. And so in this week's imaginative prayer, this week your child will have a chance to ask God to bring someone to their mind, like someone specifically who your child is having trouble loving. This week's imaginative prayer will simply invite your child to ask a very poignant question to God. And then what we hope will happen is that God will come in there and respond to your child in some way during that imaginative time. And this practice of asking God specific questions and hoping and expecting that God would speak directly to our hearts, this practice is rooted in the Ignatian prayer of examen. And the prayer of examen is a prayer where we simply wonder in God's presence about what is actually going on in the interior of our life. We notice emotions and thoughts, and we take note of our conversation with God. And this kind of self-reflection, it doesn't really come naturally for a child. Becoming self-aware of one's inner life is actually a skill that's learned through practice and repetition, just like hitting a baseball or making an omelet. And so a question that we bring to God in prayer, like this one, is there anyone who I'm having trouble loving in my life? Eventually, down the developmental road a ways, can become a deeper question like, is there anyone that I'm harboring bitterness against? Or are there any relationships in my life where I'm bringing a lot of anxiety to? And so this week's imaginative prayer is focused on helping your child ask God for help in loving somebody very specific. But underneath this very practical question, we're doing some formational work around creating a practice for you and for your family around inviting God to speak into areas of our life. And this posture of welcoming God's voice and God's input into our life, this is part of the bedrock of living into a life with God with a posture towards spiritual formation. And so as you journey in this imaginative prayer work and as you interact here with the imaginative prayer community, I hope you're getting on the message board and maybe asking some questions. I want you to know that we're almost always doing really two things in our work together. First, we're doing good work with content around the themes of Scripture and maybe even some theological work around how you and your child come to understand who God is and how God is relating to you. And second, we're planting little seeds. We're sprinkling a little yeast in the dough around our practices. We're teaching you and your child to do the work of noticing and reflection and to bring that work into a posture of prayer. And so this is the kind of work we're doing this week in our imaginative prayer in this section on loving others. Have a good week. I hope you can find some time to rest in prayer this week with your child. Okay, blessings to you.